Hey, pregame for James Wood's performance in Monday night's Home Run Derby by hanging out at Walter's Sports Bar right across the street from Nationals Park. Your first round of beer is on Mike Rizzo and the Rizzo Family Foundation. Monday, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. A round on Riz, quote, as a way to say thank you to the fans for 19 amazing years with the Washington Nationals, end quote. Visit waltersdc.com.
A massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, especially these days. 8 different settings, adjustable intensity, plus it's heated, and it just feels so good. Yes, a massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, but when it can come with a car, suddenly it seems quite practical. The all-new 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan, packed with premium features like available massaging front seats, it only feels extravagant.
With the first pick of the 2025 MLB Draft, the Washington Nationals select Eli Willits, a shortstop from Fort Cobb Broxton High School in Fort Cobb, Oklahoma.
There's a lot of development still left to do, but I'm excited and happy to get to work with such a great organization and great people in the Nats organization. So I'm ready to start building relationships with my teammates, my coaches, and get to work.
Couldn't be more excited. Eli, he's a special player, great hit tool, makes contact, controls the strike zone. We love his swing, switch hitter, just a clean operation at the plate and, with developing power. So, impact at the plate and then just an elite shortstop, somebody who stays at shortstop, somebody with great range, smooth hands, great arm, accurate. And then you add on top of that, intangibles and confidence and work ethic, maturity that's off the charts. So, you put all that together, it's rare to get someone that we think is the best hitter in the draft and the best fielder in the draft. And so we just felt that was an opportunity we couldn't pass up.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Well, the Nats with the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 MLB Draft, in fact, took a middle infielder from a high school in Oklahoma. But that middle infielder was not Ethan Holliday. The Nats with the number 1 overall pick took shortstop Eli Willits out of a high school in Oklahoma. The Nats did not take shortstop / third baseman Ethan Holliday, who also was out of a high school of Oklahoma, and who many thought the Nats would take. He was taken by the Colorado Rockies with the number 4 overall pick. The Nats did not take LSU starting pitcher Cade Anderson, who many thought the Nats would take. He was taken by the Seattle Mariners with the number 3 overall pick. So why Eli Willits? Well, we're going to be exploring that over the course of this show, as well as discussing yet another loss for the Nats on the field. The Nats over the weekend got swept for a second consecutive weekend. Sunday afternoon, an 8-1 loss at the Milwaukee Brewers to complete a 3-game sweep. The Nats now at a new low point in MLB's 2025 regular season at 20 games below 500, 38 and 58. You can find us on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. We have a website you can check out too, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat podcast t-shirt. Mark, Eli Willits is a name that had come up somewhat regarding the Nats, although certainly not a ton. There is the issue of money that we do need to get to, but ultimately, why was Eli Willits the pick?
There's a lot to this one, Al. Let's just say that right up front. I don't think it's quite as simple as any one specific answer, but let's look at it this way. This was, as we discussed when we previewed the draft the other day, this was not a year in which, to most people out there was a clear, obvious number 1 choice. Certainly not to the extent that there was when the Nats drafted Steven Strasburg, Bryce Harper back in the day. So it was a wider group of possibilities all along. And the sense I got all along is that they were looking at a bunch of different guys. And while Holliday and Anderson drew the most attention, I think, nationally and from the prognosticators out there, what you saw was a lot of them citing what they expected to happen based on what they were hearing from other teams. They weren't necessarily getting that straight from the Nationals. The Nats were really tight-lipped on this one. And I think this even goes back before the change of GMs. I don't think this was just a product of Mike DiBartolo taking over in the last week. If we're to believe them, and I do believe them at this, they were high on Willits really all along. Maybe hadn't settled on him all along as the number one pick, but were high on him all along. And so as it got closer to the day, I kept hearing things like, yeah, they're considering Anderson and Holliday, but you should think of some other names too. It's not just those two. There are others in the mix. And sure enough, they took somebody who was not in that mix. Now, I think they view him, and you heard it from Danny Haas, you heard it from Mike DiBartolo, they view him as the best combination of hitter and defensive shortstop that was there in this draft. Now, there's an obvious comparison to make to Ethan Holliday, who came out of high school from the same state. Both of them had fathers who played in the big leagues. So there's an apples to apples comparison here. And I thought was pretty striking. They were kind of saying, without actually using Holliday's name, that they viewed Willits as the better prospect specifically at shortstop. And the thought was that Holliday might have to move away from that position in the long run. So I think that's number one, a true baseball evaluation. Number two, you heard both DiBartolo and Haas say that this was a case where the scouts and the analytics matched up. That's not always something we've heard from this organization. We know Mike DiBartolo's background of that. We've heard him say time for major change. It seems like this was a case where the analytics were a part of the discussion, and the belief was that what the analytics were showing kind of backed up what the scouts saw as well. So there's that. And then the third point, and I think this is a really important one, and we alluded to this the other night as well. If the difference between the players wasn't that great, then you do have an opportunity to have financial considerations to this. And by that, I don't mean that you're going for the cheaper player necessarily, but he is a player who the belief is that you could get for less than slot value. He is not a Scott Boras client. Holliday and Anderson are. If you get him for less than slot value, you can spend above slot on later picks. Second round, third round. As we tape this, they haven't drafted yet the second and third round. I'm really curious to see what they do now in those later rounds, because I have a hunch, the way they kind of telegraphed this was to suggest that they might want to try to get better players with maybe first round pedigrees who slip because they're asking for more, to do that in the later rounds. So this may be one of those that we don't really have a full evaluation on for a little while longer.
And that is a viable and off-use strategy in the MLB draft, to try to go with the lesser cost in the first round so that you can spend a little more in later rounds. Teams do that. I get the immediate question that every Nats fan on the planet was asking, which is this the Nats being cheap? Okay, we get where you're coming from on that, but this actually is a viable MLB draft strategy. So we'll see if, in fact, that is what is happening here. So the way that the MLB draft works, for those who don't know, is each team has a pool of money to spend. The Nats for this draft have a total pool of $16,597,800 to spend. As Mark was just saying, the Nats, in theory, could benefit from spending less on the number one overall pick and then more on other picks, like, say, first-round talents who fall due to signability/money concerns. Now, when it comes to Eli Willits, so first of all, he put up video game-like numbers this past season for his high school in Oklahoma, an OPS of 1,514, 128 plate appearances, on-base percentage 602, slugging percentage 912. The other really interesting thing with him is how young he is. He's just 17 years old. He was born on December 9th, 2007. He at 17 years old and 7 months is the youngest first overall pick in an MLB draft ever. He is the fourth youngest selection at any point in the history of the MLB draft. And I actually think that this is a sneaky positive with high school players. There are many reasons to have doubts about high school players. I totally understand that. But if you hit on the high school player, he arrives at the major league level at a super young age. And so you have him, and then when it's time to re-sign him, you can feel good about re-signing him to a long-term big money contract, if in fact he's a good player, because it's not like he's hitting free agency. It's not like he's coming up contractually in his late 20s, early 30s. He's coming up in, say, his mid-20s. And so I do think that that is a sneaky positive to drafting a high school player like this. He's 17 years old. If he is who he is being drafted to be, he could be playing in the majors by the time he's, say, 20. So you think about that, 6 years of team control, 26. That's quite nice if, in fact, he ends up being the player who you hope that he can be. So I do think that the age thing is a sneaky positive. And then Mark mentioned the pedigree. So much talk about Ethan Holliday's bloodlines. Eli Willits' dad, Reggie Willits, an outfielder for the Los Angeles Angels at the major league level for the 2006 through 2011 seasons. How many of you listening feel old when you hear that a player who was playing 06 to 2011 has a son who was just taken with the number 1 overall pick? Reggie Willits also was the New York Yankees first base coach for the 2018 through 2021 seasons. We both agreed this was a pick with which the Nats needed to go upside. Just take the guy who has the highest upside. I think it's entirely plausible that the Nats view Eli Willits as having a higher upside than Ethan Holliday. It just becomes a thing of, okay, you better be right, right? Like you had the number 1 overall pick. You better connect with this pick. And we are, of course, years away from finding out the answer to that question.
Well, yeah, and that is the key, is that it's going to be a long time. And so it is interesting that you've got, the guy in theory making this pick who was just named interim GM. We don't know what his long-standing possibility of running the organization is going to be. We don't know who else is going to be on this team. We may not even know who's going to own this team by the time that Eli Willits makes the big leagues. And by the way, he did say that his personal goal has always been to reach the big leagues at age 20. So that's still 3 years. Okay.
When I went through the reclassification thing, I told my dad that I wanted to be in the big leagues by the time I'm 20. So that's definitely the goal, and it's still going to be the goal. So I got to work every day. Which
may sound like a lot, but for a high school player, and certainly one who's younger than most, that's not outrageous at all. That's still, as you point out, getting the big leagues at a really young age. Now, I will say, I like your point about it allows you to potentially re-sign him at a much younger age. Well, they had a couple of super top young players who reached free agency at 26, named Bryce Harper and Juan Soto, and we saw how that worked out. So I wouldn't just assume that there's a great chance of it, but as I mentioned, he's not a Scott Boras client. That doesn't mean he can't become a Boras client someday down the road. That can happen as well. But I do wonder if deep down that was a little bit a part of the process. Maybe this is someone who could be talked into signing early, not waiting until he gets closer to free agency. Maybe he is someone who's amenable to a long-term extension that locks him up for a long time very early in the process, something that we've seen some other teams do. The Nats have not. Now, we understand the reasons why that may be the case, and we're getting way ahead of ourselves here. First things first, he's got to actually sign, his draft contract first and then work his way up to the big leagues. But I think all of that kind of comes together in formulating this. And yes, I do think they view him as the best player, or certainly the best position player. But if it's that close as it might have been, then these are some other factors that you maybe put in his corner that were not necessarily there in Holliday's corner. Now, the fascinating thing to me is going to be this. You said they better be right. They better get this one right. We're going to have a perfect apples to apples comparison years from now, where you're going to see Ethan Holliday's career, you're going to see Eli Willits' career, and you're going to be able to say they both came out of the same draft, same state, playing in high school, same position, at least to start out. And we're going to see who has the better career and know all along that the Nats had their choice of either one. They sure hope they got the right one, but it is going to be something that everybody around baseball is going to be watching for years to come now between these two.
It's not unlike Dylan Cruz and Wyatt Langford, two outfielders out of the SEC. The Nats had their pick of those two, went with Dylan Cruz, and time will tell if the Nats made the right call. What's also interesting to me is that the Nats now are loaded with promising young shortstops. You have C.J. Abrams, of course, as the organization's number 1 shortstop, but the Nats in their farm system have shortstop Seaver King, who is their number 4 overall prospect per MLB Pipeline, have shortstop Luke Dickerson, who is their number 6 overall prospect per MLB Pipeline, and now the Nats have a shortstop in Eli Willits. Now, shortstop is the number 1 defensive position in terms of first base, second base, shortstop, third base. Like if you're talking about the defensive spectrum, shortstop is at the top of the list out of those 4 spots. And so if a guy can play shortstop, he can almost certainly play any of those other 3 positions. So I know sometimes people worry about, you have too many shortstops or you have too many third base. It doesn't matter, okay? Like, don't worry about that. You can always move someone from shortstop to second base or from shortstop to third base, as the Nats just did with Brady House. But you think about the Nats, what they could have in a few years at the major league level in terms of like a super athletic infield with all of these guys who initially were shortstops. I do think that's interesting. And let's be honest, too, and not to bring up a sore subject here, but, C.J. Abrams is under team control through the 2028 season. There is no guarantee that he will be here beyond then. There is no guarantee that whoever is next up as the full-time head of Nationals baseball operations will see fit to stick with Abrams long-term. Maybe Abrams gets traded, this coming offseason. Like, we don't know. There's a lot that's up in the air here. So the idea that, like, this team is set at shortstop and shouldn't be doing anything at shortstop, I would not be assuming anything like that. But organizationally speaking now, Abrams and King and Dickerson and Willits, some interesting, promising young shortstops in the organization.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, if he really does debut at age 20, that's 3 years from now, that's in 2028, which would be C.J. Abrams' walk year. So maybe they do ultimately overlap and somebody moves to another position, but maybe they don't. Remember when they acquired, it was a different process, but they acquired Trey Turner. The idea was, well, that's going to be eventually your replacement for Ian Desmond at shortstop. Desi, who was a 3-time Silver Slugger and an all-star for them on a team that won division titles. So everybody loves C.J. Abrams, but we don't know 3 years from now what he's going to be and how much he figures into the long-term plan. Maybe he goes to a different position. Maybe they re-sign him. Maybe he ends up going elsewhere, and now you have somebody else. But this is not just the Nats doing this with drafting of shortstops. I saw at one point tonight, I forget how many picks through we were, but it was like at least 15 picks in, I believe. And everybody taken so far had either been a shortstop or a pitcher. No outfielders, no corner infielders, no catchers. I think it tells you a lot about the way that scouts and talent evaluators treat this. If you can play shortstop, you can play anywhere. Those are the best athletes. You draft them there and then ultimately move them around to other spots. So I don't read too much into the idea of what position these guys play, when they're drafted. I do think it's important that and they made this point to say that they really do view him as an elite shortstop. Brady House was drafted as a shortstop. And right away, even on draft night, they were already talking, well, he might be a third baseman someday. And turns out that he is. So they're not saying that in Willits' case at this point. So I think there is a feeling that he really is the real deal and can be a shortstop, not just in the short term, but the long term as well. So it's going to be a while until they see him. But let's talk about him as a player. I mean, switch hitter, great contact skills. They believe the power is still going to come. Stole 40-something bases in a short high school season, so we know he can run. And very smooth defensively. I mean, he sounds, if you didn't know the names coming into it and hadn't read up on the backgrounds of all these guys, you would probably say to yourself, boy, this kid sounds legit. He sounds like the real deal. So I think we have to keep that in mind and not just base our opinions on this off of what the experts supposedly thought they were seeing going into it and the guys who drew the most attention coming into it. We'll see, again, in the long run, but I think it's pretty clear that they truly did value him and see him as the best available player that meets their needs.
Nats need to hit on this pick. That is stating the obvious, but I don't think it can be emphasized enough. The drafting ineptitude needs to stop. It has been something that has gone on for way too long. It's the number one reason this team is in the position that it is in. And we shall see if the Nats, in fact, hit with this selection of Eli Willits with the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 MLB Draft. Hey, it's Al Galdi for Window Nation. The humidity is rather thick. You've got the AC running on blast, the fans on, and the shades closed, but the heat still seems to be seeping into your home. That is, until you replace your old, drafty windows with energy-efficient, top-quality windows from Window Nation. And right now, you can get 50% off all window styles plus 0 interest for 5 years. You heard that right. With Window Nation, you won't pay any interest until 2030. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. Also, know this, Window Nation will get the job done in a day or less. Window Nation's installation crews have over a decade of experience, so you can feel comfortable knowing that your windows are installed right the first time. Don't procrastinate another day. Save yourself another month of living in discomfort. Don't miss Window Nation's biggest deal of the year, 50% off all window styles now through July 31st. And remember, that comes with 0 interest until 2030. 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. That's 866-90Nation or windownation.com. And tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast.
The McDonald's snack wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch snack wrap. Spicy snack wrap. You broke the internet. For a snack. Snack wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey Nats fans, after taping, the second and third rounds of the MLB Draft were held, and the Nats had a pick in each of them. At number 49 overall in the second round, Washington selected outfielder Ethan Petry from the University of South Carolina. Here's an opposing coach within the conference, Tony Vitello, from the University of Tennessee, on Petry.
Well, I think, first of all, scouts have their work cut out for him with him and Taylor, because we talked about Taylor. Does he do better or worse, in an SEC program where, or school where maybe the lights are a little brighter, but also the comp? So which way does it go? And with Petry, if his team was a little bit more well-rounded of a lineup, I don't think we could have keyed in on him as much when we were facing him, but we were scared to death of him. He can make you pay like he just did there at any minute. You and I were joking about Tom Brunansky type right-handed power. He does swing. He's super aggressive, but if you got a hitter with power, you'd like a guy that wants to get in there and do damage, and he certainly wants to do that. And he got a little fire to him, too, when he's in the box.
That audio courtesy of MLB Network. Petry this past year hit just 10 homers, but the two previous seasons, 23 and 21 respectively. For context, in college baseball, usually the leaders in home runs are at about the mid to high 20s. We'll be back later in the show to tell you about the Nationals' third round selection. Now back to Mark and Al.
McGee, the big right-hander, sets. First base side of the slab. He kicks in. Here it comes. Fastball right down the middle. Strike three, and the game is over.
So the Nats made the selection of Eli Willits hours after another loss, an 8-1 loss at the Milwaukee Brewers on Sunday afternoon, completing a 3-game sweep. And so we have arrived at MLB's All-Star break, and the Nats arrive at the All-Star break at 20 games below 500 at 38 and 58. It's amazing to me, man. The Nats entered June 2 games below 500 at 28 and 30. And we on the podcast at the time talked about the potential for a June surge. It had been so long since the Nats had surged. It has been so long since the Nats had surged. And we talked about, might it be, that June 2025 ends up being like, say, June 2021. The team takes off and really makes a nice run and really starts to kick the door down when it comes to busting through on this rebuild and busting out of this rebuild and becoming a good team again. And instead, the exact opposite has happened. It's unreal what has taken place here. The Nats, since the start of June, are 10 and 28. I mean, imagine someone telling you at 28 and 30, concluding the month of May, that this team was about to lose 28 out of 38 games going into the All-Star break, to say nothing of the massive change with the firings of Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez. I just can't get over how much this season has spiraled downward over the last month and a half. And to look at where this team is at the All-Star break, 20 games below 500. The run differential now is at minus 102. The Nats have been outscored by 102 runs. Second worst record in the NL, second worst run differential in the NL. We know how we got here, but man, there's a big part of me that's asking, how did we get here? How did this happen? How did we go from 28 and 30 at the end of May to 20 games below 500 now at the All-Star break?
The bottom fell out. It really did. And you're right. We were talking, they had a winning record in May, 15 and 12. And we were discussing, hey, this is only the second time since the rebuild that they had done that over a full month. And maybe this is the start of better things to come. And we understood that there were still flaws to deal with this team, but the feeling was that the lineup, while inconsistent, was hitting for a lot more power and capable of doing big things. That the rotation was, if not elite, was at least giving them a chance most nights. And that the bullpen, while still not good, had solidified itself after just a disastrous start to the season. So what's happened since then? Lineup-wise, nowhere close to consistent. They have their moments, they have their games where it all comes together, but those have been few and far between. And there's way more of these games where you saw what we did on Sunday, where there being no hit for quite a while, and they end up with 1 run on 4 hits and not really giving themselves much of a chance in that regard. From the rotation standpoint, while Mackenzie Gore has been pitching like a legit number 1, and he's an all-star for good reason, the rest of them, while they have their good starts here and there, have not consistently done it, and you've seen them have to fight their way to get through 5-6 innings and keep the game somewhat within reach, very often having innings fall apart on them. And then that bullpen, which I'm still going to say is better than it was in April, but it's sure not good right now. And it doesn't just include the young guys, the middle relievers, the players they've added over time. Kyle Finnegan blew a save the other day. He hasn't actually had a true save in over a month, I believe. Part of that because the games they've won have been more lopsided, but he's blown a couple of these opportunities now, and you saw it in Milwaukee over the weekend. So, I mean, it's like everything that could go wrong pretty much has gone wrong for them, and that's led to this record. Now, do I think it continues at that kind of rate the rest of the way? I don't. But I also am concerned about this as we're now a couple weeks away from the trade deadline. They're going to be sellers, no doubt. The question is just how much they're going to sell. Is it just the guys on final year, their contract, or is it anybody beyond that? Once we get to August, what's going to be left? And how are they going to win games with what they have left? It's a lot to ask. And they're in a spot now where I think even to reach 71 wins again, a total that nobody would have counted as acceptable for this year, they've got to play winning baseball the rest of the season just to get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about a win total potentially in the 80s. Right now, it's a win total in the 60s. And like you just said, to get to a win total in the 70s, this team is going to have to hump it the rest of the way. And who knows if that's possible. And thinking about what there is to look forward to post the All-Star break, and, there is this odd juxtaposition of the record is awful, the run differential is awful, you've had the massive change, and yet James Wood, C.J. Abrams, Mackenzie Gore, all are having very good seasons. But I think 2 things really stand out. Dylan Crews needs to come back and needs to end this season in strong fashion. I think one of the real bummers about this season is what has happened with Dylan Crews, where, yes, the process stats have been good, but the result stats have not been good. And now he's missed a lot of time due to this oblique injury. And you hope like heck this doesn't end up being a lost season for Dylan Crews. But I think this team, this season, and this organization as a whole needs Dylan Crews back healthy and productive so that you can exit this season feeling like you got something here with a guy who was taken with a number 2 overall pick. The other guy is Brady House. And we got a taste of this on Saturday with him hitting the 2 home runs. He did not have a particularly good game on Sunday afternoon, went over, committed a key error. But if you can at least have Crews and House join the nucleus of Wood, Abrams, and Gore, then maybe, just maybe, this season isn't totally lost. But right now, it just feels like such a debacle of a season, even with Wood, Abrams, and Gore doing well. Now, neither Wood nor Abrams played on Sunday afternoon. The Nats in this game did not have James Wood in the lineup for a regular season game for the first time since Wood got promoted to the majors all the way back on July 1st, 2024. Wood did struggle in the 6-5 walk-off loss at the Brewers on Saturday. He in that game went 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts and had a bad defensive moment that resulted in a key double. But also in this game on Sunday afternoon, C.J. Abrams, a late scratch due to minor right shoulder soreness. And Mark, the Nats during the game announced why C.J. Abrams was a late scratch. So, one of the things we wondered about was with Mike Rizzo gone, would the Nats finally start providing in-game injury updates? And we got this with Abrams in terms of why he was a late scratch. So there's something if you're looking for positives.
Well, yeah, so the day wasn't a total loss, I guess, in that regard, right? It was good to know that it was that and not something else. You never know what reasons there might be for a late benching like that. It sounds like it was affecting him the day before. You saw a bad throw in the field, I think, on Saturday, and it was acting up. And, you've got the All-Star break. You might as well give him this day off and give him a longer stretch of time now to just get himself back into shape. So I know, look, I felt the same thing. I saw a lineup that did not include either CJ Abrams or James Wood, and I'm thinking, how in the world are they going to try to win this game now? And I'm sure that was frustrating for any fans who tuned in. That said, the importance of this one game is not that high. I understand you give James Wood the day off. He hasn't had one yet in the big leagues. He's going to have a whole lot going on the next few days, beginning with the home run derby in Atlanta and then the All-Star game on Tuesday. Go ahead and let him take a breather. I think he's earned it. And in Abrams' case, make sure he's good to go coming out of the break. You don't want this thing to linger and be an issue. So I get those. And I agree with you. Dylan Crews is maybe my number one story of the second half of the year. I mean, James Wood in his pursuit of 40 homers and everything else, of course. But, Crews has lost 2 months now. And he is getting close. He's taking BP on the field. I think we're going to see him maybe not right out of the break, but probably within a week out of the break is my guess when we're going to see him. He was starting to click right before the injury happened. Now, I don't know if it's going to take him time to get that back or not, but it is a really important second half of the year for him as they try to formulate what this team's going to look like in 2026. He's got to be a really important part of it. And I mean, a guy hitting in the top half of the lineup, not a guy hitting ninth like he was at times before the injury. So I'm really interested in that. Seconded on Brady House. Bad game Sunday, but I'll tell you what, I think his defense has been excellent so far. The offense, I think, has been fine, and you knew the power was in there somewhere, and we saw it on Saturday. Good sign there, absolutely. So I would love at the end of this year for us to look at a lineup that consistently looks like it could be Abrams, Wood, Crews, House, something like that, 1 through 4. That would be fantastic. Now, you don't just put them up there because they're supposed to be good. You put them up there because they've earned it. I hope by the end of the year they have earned it. That paints a much rosier picture, I think, going into 2026.
Tim Shover's here to tell you about Babbel. Did you know that the Nats are on the Spanish radio airwaves for the second consecutive season?
Luis García Jr. por Lipscomb, un batazo altísimo, atrás era dinero, la bola se va, se va, se va, se fue a la fruta.
If you want to know what Luciano and Gustavo are saying on the broadcast on calls such as this one, then check out Babbel. And here's their special offer for Nats Chat listeners. 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/NatsChat. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/NatsChat. That's spelled BABBEL.com/NatsChat. Babbel.com/NatsChat. Rules and restrictions may apply.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
On Sunday night in the third round, the Nationals at number 80 overall selected a high school pitcher, Landon Harmon, a right-hander out of Mississippi. Here's MLB Network's Jim Callis on the righty.
This reminds me when the Nationals got Travis Shakur in the third round a couple years ago. This is one of the better arms, pure arms in the high school ranks. He's up to 99 miles an hour. He sits 93, 96. It's got a good flat approach angle that gives you carrying arm side run. He's got feel. He'll manipulate the shape of his slider. He'll throw a tighter one. He'll get chases with a bigger one. Hasn't really had to throw much of a changeup, so that'll be on the to-do list. Control, it's typical high school control, so needs to polish there. But man, he's 99 miles an hour. He's already 6'5", 190. I bet you're glad you're not going to have to see him in Mississippi State.
That audio courtesy of MLB Network. Now back to Mark and Al.
Here's the pitch. Swing and a drive hit well to deep right center field. This one way back. Going goodbye. Jackson Chourio indeed extends his hitting streak to 11 games in a row with a bomb to right center field. A 3-run homer here at the bottom of the 8th inning. It's now Milwaukee 6 and Washington 1.
The Nats on Sunday afternoon, just 1 run, just 4 hits, just 1 walk, 1 for 6 with runners in scoring position. The 4 hits, a double, and 3 singles. So the Brewers starting pitcher, Freddie Peralta, began the outing with 5 1/3 no-hit innings. He, for the game, allowed 1 run in 6 2/3 innings with 7 strikeouts versus 1 walk. The Nats starting pitcher for this game was Jake Irvin. 3 runs, all of which were unearned in 5 innings. I thought he actually pitched pretty well. 5 strikeouts, 1 walk, only gave up 4 hits, all of which were singles. He issued a hit by pitch. He threw a lot of strikes, 93 pitches, 62 strikes, 31 balls. All 3 of the runs allowed by Irvin came in the bottom of the 2nd, during which Brady House committed a 2-out fielding error. And Irvin did then give up 3 consecutive singles, including a 2-out bases-loaded 2-run single by Anthony Siegler into right field and a 2-out RBI single by Sal Frelick through the right side of the infield. And the Nats bullpen in this game, another rough game. 4 Nats relievers combined to allow 5 runs in 3 innings. Luis Garcia did toss a perfect bottom of the 6th with 2 swinging strikeouts. Mason Thompson did toss a scoreless and hitless bottom of the 7th. But Jackson Rutledge allowed 4 runs in 1/3 of an inning. He would ended up being a 5-run 8th for the Brewers. Gave up back-to-back home runs. Gave up an opposite field 3-run homer by Jackson Chourio to right center for a 6-1 Brewers lead. That homer going a projected 425 feet per StatCast. And Rutledge, to the next batter he faced, gave up a solo homer by Bryce Terang to right center for a 7-1 Brewers lead. And then Andre Lara allowed a run in 2/3 of an inning. He and that Brewers 5-run 8th faced 6 batters, got 2 outs, allowed each of the first 4 batters he faced to reach base in issuing 2 walks and a hit by pitch and giving up an infield single. Lara, 29 pitches, a mere 12 strikes versus 17 balls. Now, the Nats on Sunday morning announced having recalled Lara from AA-Harrisburg. Saturday night, the Nats announced having optioned Shinosuke Ogasawara back to AAA Rochester. Do you view that as a procedural move, or do you think that Ogasawara is in fact now out of the Nats rotation?
Well, he would not be eligible to return in time to make the 5th start coming out of the All-Star break. It's close. It'd be just a day, but he would not be eligible by my count. You have to be down for 10 days unless you're replacing, somebody else who gets hurt. So I think that was actually evidence of them intending to go in another direction. Maybe Cade Cavalli. That would be quite an important story for the second half of the year as well if we finally get to see him. I believe by the time we get to that point, we're talking like July 22nd or so, I think, when that 5th start comes up. I don't think there's any service time issue with him by then. I think they're in the clear as far as keeping him in the big leagues the rest of the year and still keeping him shy of 3 total years of service time. So I think that's important consideration. He had a good start, most recently in the minors. He needed that at AAA after a couple of bad ones. We'll see. We got a little time until this one comes up, but I'd like to believe that that's the decision-making process there. Lara was, hey, Ogasawara is not pitching again prior to the break. Let's get a fresh arm up here in case we need him. They did. They probably wish they didn't need him the way that game went. As far as the pitching in this game went, I do think Jake Irvin pitched well, but he did have an opportunity to get out of that inning. And I understand there's the error on House. There's also a play that Jake himself didn't make on a little tapper in front of the mound and couldn't get a good grip on it, and that prolonged the inning before the bigger hits came. Yes, they're unearned, and yes, they should have been out of it before that. But I feel like this is a consistent theme that we've seen with a good number of pitchers on the Nats stat. Somebody makes a mistake behind them. We know that their infield defense in particular has been a struggle, and the pitcher doesn't pick them up. It's a lot to ask, I understand, but ultimately that's your job to get out of that and minimize the damage. He didn't do that. Now, he pitched very well the rest of the way. He gave him a chance. He's not the reason they lost the game, certainly not. But to take that next step that you want from him, you'd love to see him get out of that without it falling apart with the 3-run scoring. And Jackson Rutledge did let it fall apart. That was an ugly inning. That game was still within reach at 3-1. Not saying they would have come back, but they had a shot. And we've seen Rutledge now have some blow-up innings. We've seen way too many of these relievers have blow-up innings. How many times in the last month have we talked about them giving up 5, 6, 7 runs in an inning and turning a competitive game into a blowout? You talked about that run differential earlier. That's why it is as bad as it is. Those innings that have completely gone out of control from them, they have not been able to stop the bleeding.
Jackson Rutledge, a man who was taken with a first-round pick by the Nats, he now, as a failed starter turned into a reliever, has the following stats at the major league level this regular season. ERA of 6.92, whip of 161, 12 home runs allowed in 40 and a third innings. If you're looking at most home runs allowed by Nats pitchers, Jake Irvin, number 1, 22, Mitchell Parker, number 2 at 13, Jackson Rutledge, number 3 at 12. He has allowed more homers than Mackenzie Gore's allowed, has allowed more homers than Trevor Williams has allowed more homers than Michael Soroka has allowed. Rutledge, initially, we thought was doing a pretty good job as a reliever. He's having a very difficult time as a reliever right now. And this idea of him transitioning from starter to reliever and, okay, well, at least maybe you can get something out of him as a reliever, I don't know about that. It may be that you can't get anything out of him at the major league level. Those numbers are pretty gory right now.
Yeah, they're not pretty. And as I said, it's kind of these innings that have gone out of control that he's kind of let fall apart. It's a real problem. It's something he's going to have to correct. We've already moved on from some of the other struggling relievers. I'm not saying he's next on the chopping block, but I think his place on the bullpen hierarchy keeps dropping down a slot to the point that he's pretty close to the bottom of the barrel there, which is not where they ultimately hoped that he would be. But we all kind of understood this was a desperation move. They gave up on him as a starter and said, all right, let's give it a shot as a reliever. Maybe that will work out. It looked okay for a month or two, but it's certainly not there right now.
You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. And we have a website that you can check out too, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast T-shirt. So the Nats have arrived at the All-Star break. We have James Wood in the MLB Home Run Derby at the Atlanta Braves Truist Park on Monday night at 8. And we have Wood and Mackenzie Gore as National League All-Stars for the All-Star game on Tuesday night at 8. The Nats will begin their post-All-Star break portion of the season with a 6-game homestand beginning with a 3-game series against the San Diego Padres at Nationals Park this weekend. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening. Enjoy your All-Star break, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
I'm super excited. Just get out there and get to work and start competing with those guys to hopefully bring home a World Series championship back to D.C. That's the goal, and just ready to get to work.
Want to get paid to listen to podcasts? At Pilot Podcasts, we connect podcasters and brands with real listeners like you before they launch their shows. It's easy. Sign up for free. Listen to podcasts before they go live and get paid for sharing your feedback. Your insights help make podcasts better, and you get rewarded for your time. Visit pilotpodcast.com/register today to sign up. That's PILOT podcasts.com/register. Pilot Podcasts. Get paid to shape the next big podcast.